Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod. Andrew Cuomo, the former New York governor, now running for mayor as an independent.
Frankly, in the primary, I made some strategic mistakes. I had a big lead, so I basically played prevent defense.
On his missteps and his role in a crowded race that is shaking traditional Democratic politics to its core.
With President Trump, you've had this far-right movement, and now you have this corresponding extreme left movement. I don't think either are productive, frankly.
David Sacks, the venture capitalist turned White House AI czar.
We have to drill, baby, drill. We have to build, baby, build.
Sacks and his All In podcast co-hosts were center stage at President Trump's rollout of an AI action plan that will drive policy.
The most important technology speech by an American president since President Kennedy declared that we had to win the space race.
Plus, Tesla's stumbles and the president's trip to his Washington neighbor, the Federal Reserve.
Knowing him, he's going to look at the tile on the floor or the toilet and say, what did they pay for that?
It's Thursday, July 24th. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick along with Andrew Ross Sorkin. Joe is out today.
President Trump is going to be visiting the Federal Reserve today. It's according to a release of Trump's schedule. The president's going to be making that trip at 4 p.m. Eastern time. This will be the first time in almost 2 decades that an American president makes an official trip to the U.S. Central Bank. Of course, it's not that far away, but Trump has been blasting Fed Chair Jerome Powell for what Trump sees as a failed strategy not to cut interest rates. He's also criticized the Fed over an over-budget renovation project, though that's mainly seen as a strategy of some sort to potentially oust Powell from that role. NBC News has reached out to the Fed for guidance on today's visit, but has not received a response. But given,
what are they going to say?
I was just going to say, given, though, that Trump is a builder of sorts, knows about renovations, I would not be surprised if part of that trip is going to be to sort of view the renovations.
Show me the
renovations. Yeah. Knowing him, he's going to look at the, tile on the floor or the toilet and say, what do they pay for that?
That's actually a very interesting point.
Right.
Would not shock me to see that, but I don't know what the Fed's supposed to say in response. Yeah, he's coming and he's going to look at this and we're going to eat this. Here's what's on the menu. Tesla shares are down following the EV maker's second quarter earnings report. Phil LeBeau joins us right now. He has more on that. Phil, the expectations had been low for Tesla, but they fell below even those lowered expectations.
Yeah, the traditional auto business, if you will, it's weak right now relative to where Tesla has been in the past. Take a look at the results for the second quarter. Look, they missed on the top and the bottom line. Second straight quarter where that happened. Free cash flow, because they're investing so heavily in autonomous, in Optimus, down 89.1%. Automotive revenue down 16.2%. That's a reflection on deliveries being down 13.5% worldwide this year. You're not delivering as many vehicles. You're not getting as much revenue in. It's as simple as that. And remember, the U.S. EV tax credits end on September 30th. So what does that mean over the next several quarters if this drag in terms of lower deliveries continues? Here's Musk from the conference call last night.
Does that mean we could have a few rough quarters? Yeah, we probably could have a few rough quarters. I'm not saying we will, but we could. Q4, Q1, maybe Q2. But once you get to autonomy at scale in the second half of next year, certainly by the end of next year, I think I would be surprised if Tesla's economics are not very compelling.
Once again, it was all about autonomy on this conference call. Yes, they talked about the traditional business, but most of the focus for Musk was on autonomous and Optimus being the future. He had a couple of predictions in here that I'd like to share with you guys. One of them is that half of the U.S. population could have access to autonomous ride-hailing by the end of the year. Keep in mind, they currently are offering autonomous ride-hailing for the robotaxi in a very small geofenced area of Austin. Yes, they're looking to expand to other cities, but that's where they are right now. As far as the Optimus robot production, Musk believes they will be at 100,000 per month within 5 years. The Cybercab production, and remember, the Cybercab no steering wheel, completely autonomous, no driver, if you will, because there's no steering wheel. That is expected to start significant production, mass production, if you will, next year. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
Hey, Phil, if the stock is down 6% today, do you think that's a reflection of the weaker auto sales picture, or do you think that's a reflection of people not buying into some of the other promises that were kind of laid out? Because we said going into this that what really mattered was how engaged Elon Musk was going to be, how much it felt like he was back running the business, and some of these forward-looking pictures of what to expect with autonomous and robots.
I think it's a little of both, Becky. Clearly, there is a set of investors in Tesla who are not crazy about the fact that the traditional vehicle business, electric vehicle business, it's going to be under pressure. It's unclear if deliveries are really stabilizing. Will they come in at about 1.66 million this year, which is what analysts are expecting, or will it be even lower than that? That's part of the weakness there. The other part may be reflected in people saying, okay, this is it. This is go time. Over the next 18 months, we will find out if Tesla will grow as quickly as Elon Musk predicts. And it may be somewhere in the middle, Becky. It may be that you do see some growth with autonomous ride hailing, but you don't see the level of growth that Elon Musk is predicting. So we're in a kind of an area here where you can pull anything you want out of this call and say, yeah, I believe in this, or no, I think he's crazy about whatever he is saying. So I know that's not the answer people want to hear, but it's the vagueness in here that is weighing on shares of Tesla.
Phil, but help us maybe just then with the reality check of this. And I follow it religiously just because I live on X, and I'm always watching the videos of folks in Austin jumping into these cabs, some of which seem to be having flawless rides, some with which seem to, run into issues along the way. What is your, at least anecdotal impression of how successful the robotaxi effort in Austin is going today, and how you'd compare that right now, at least, to what's going on with Waymo? Obviously, they use very different technologies, and obviously, for all this to work, both for Waymo, frankly, and for Tesla, you're going to need regulators in all sorts of municipalities and cities and places to say, you know what, we think that this is safe and it's good, and we want this in our town.
It's the rate of growth, Andrew. When you go back and you look at Waymo when it was first starting off, and I remember going out and going in a Waymo very early on, it was very slow in terms of its growth beyond geo-fenced areas. And that's similar to what we're seeing with Tesla in Austin right now. I don't care how many videos you see on YouTube of people getting in there. The reality is it's still in a very confined area. Now, that could change. A month from now, they could have approval to start in San Francisco with safety drivers behind the wheel. And maybe then they go into Arizona. It's all about the rate of growth. So I do see the videos. I think everybody sees the videos here. But the reality is, how much will they be able to grow? How quickly? And then the other thing that people are going to want to see, definitive numbers in terms of that growth. You get them from Waymo, you get them from Uber as it's growing, as it has grown its business over the years. That's going to be the measuring stick.
Hey, Phil, I was just adding up. If he's going to get to half the U.S. population in the next 6 months, that's going to be a heavy lift, because even if you got New York City, L.A., Chicago, Houston, San Francisco, Boston, Washington, Phoenix, just throwing that all together, that's less than 25 million people. Maybe more if you consider the commuters who come into New York City during the day. But just looking at the population statistics on that, even if you got all of those regulators to approve it, you need 160, 170 million people before you can say you've got half the population.
And that's not going to happen. Everybody knows that's not going to happen. And I think if you sat down Elon Musk and said, do you really think you're going to get as much approval in the next 6 months as you are indicating with half the population having availability? He might be honest with you and say, yeah, we may not, but we plan on growing very quickly. And that's look, he puts these, you guys know how this
optimism is what
works.
has pushed him to the point where he is. That's true.
He puts this stuff out there on his calls on a regular basis. And yes, there are times when these predictions have been wildly wrong, but he's also been right enough. Maybe not on the timeline he wants, but he's been right enough that you cannot dismiss his projections outright.
And his optimism has gotten him where he is and gotten Tesla where it is. Yeah, I will grant all of that.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
And God bless you and good luck, because the race has just begun and you're going to win it. Thank you very much, everybody.
President Trump signing a trio of executive orders on artificial intelligence. They're focused on loosening environmental rules and expanding AI exports to the U.S. allies in an attempt to keep the U.S. ahead of China in that technology. At an event in Washington, the president also called for a single federal standard for AI regulators. Now, here's an interesting moment from yesterday's event.
I said, look, we'll break this guy up. This is before I learned the facts of life. I said, we'll break him up. They said, don't say it's very hard. I said, why? I said, what percentages of the market does he have? Sir, he has 100%. I said, who the hell is he? What's his name? His name is Jensen Huang, NVIDIA. I said, what the hell is NVIDIA? I've never heard of it before. He said, you don't want to know about it, sir. I figured we could go in and we could sort of break him up a little bit, get him a little competition. And I found out it's not easy in that business.
It's not easy in that business. There's a lot of people who would like to break him up or at least try to compete with him.
And have been trying
to compete with him. The goal ultimately is to figure out a way to get cheaper processing chips. I mean, that's going to be the whole.
Sure. But I think NVIDIA is working towards that too. Been working towards it, so it's not,
I don't know about that.
I don't think they want cheaper chips. Making sure that nobody can outflank them. That they've got to be better than anybody who comes in.
Sure, but as long as they have the better chip, they're going to be able to charge the higher price. And as long as these prices are where they are, the model of AI doesn't fundamentally actually work for so many of the LLMs and all of the providers because the cost is so high. I mean, I think
but this is the huge reason that we're winning in the AI war. This is a big part of it. You've got so many things that have happened with this.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I would like them to succeed. I don't not want them to succeed. I think that ultimately for the U.S. to succeed, Amazon will need to succeed with its chips. Yeah. Others, AMD is going to need to succeed, and the price is going to have to come down because we're winning a war that's sort of works and sort of doesn't. Meaning meaning AI sort of works and sort of doesn't, partially because the economics of the AI ecosystem are broken, and part of the reason they're broken is because so much of it goes to the chip maker, and if it all goes to the chip maker and the other guys can't make any money doing it, then the whole thing sort of eventually gets very
I think if you were to ask Jensen Huang, though, he will tell you prices are going to come down, and has said that.
Right.
Prices will continue to come down, just like we've seen with all technology along the way.
We can all hope they haven't in this case that much yet. We'll see.
They've gotten better and better, though.
Well, because they've gotten better and better, and that's the. Anyway, we've got a special interview with White House AI Tsar David Sacks is going to be joining us this morning. We're going to talk to him about everything that's gone on and where it all goes. Columbia University is now going to be paying the federal government $200 million to restore the majority of the funding that was cut by the Trump administration over allegations that the university violated anti-discrimination laws. Now, Columbia said under the agreement, the vast majority of the federal grants that had been canceled or paused earlier this year will now be reinstated, and the school's access to billions of dollars in grants will be restored. Back in March, you'll remember the Trump administration accused Columbia of inaction in the face of harassment of Jewish students stemming from protests over the Israel-Gaza war. At that time, the White House said that it would be canceling $400 million in grants to Columbia. President Trump celebrating the agreement with the school, saying on Truth Social the following, quote, Columbia has also committed to ending their ridiculous DEI policies, admitting students based only on merit, and protecting the civil liberties of their students on campus. Of course, a similar fight, but without a settlement, is taking place in Cambridge, Massachusetts, against Harvard, where they have gone to court over all of this and more, frankly. So it's very interesting to see sort of the two ways this is all getting resolved.
And if you thought they were going to team up and tackle it in the same manner.
Not happening.
Yeah.
Cheese will be next.
Still to come, Andrew Cuomo, independent candidate for New York City Mayor, lost in a primary to upstart Zohran Mamdani. He admits he made some mistakes, but he has hope for the general election this fall.
A multi-candidate field favors Mamdani. If you get down to a two-person race, certainly he can be beaten. Polls show I beat him now in a two-person race.
Which polls he's talking about, we will ask, and the lengths he's willing to go to ensure a much smaller race.
Come September, who's ever stronger basically between me and Adams, that candidate should go forward, the other one should defer.
Squawk Pod will be right back. Welcome back to Squawk Pod. I'm producer Katie Kramer. July is maybe a bit early to focus on a local election, but not this year. New York, America's largest city of some 8 million people, is in the thick of a mayoral race that has captured national attention.
My friends, we have done it. I will be your Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City.
Zohran Mamdani, a 33-year-old state lawmaker and Democratic socialist, won the city's Democratic Party primary for mayor last month after a poor showing from ex-Governor Andrew Cuomo, despite the millions Cuomo's donors, many from Wall Street and big business, poured into his campaign. Cuomo's still running as an independent. Here's his supporter, billionaire Home Depot founder Ken Langone on Squawk Box last week.
I'm betting on you for one reason. You're cornered, and this is your way out, and you're going to work like hell. Now, frankly, from what I hear, he didn't work very hard in the primary. He didn't campaign that much. I know a lot of people that gave a lot of money that really are.
Why do you think he didn't do that?
Because I thought his name was enough to carry him. That this kid was a joke.
Also, in this race, sitting New York City Mayor Eric Adams, ostensibly a Democrat. He joined us on the Squawk Box set earlier this month and weighed in on the other, now independent, Andrew Cuomo.
For him to see that I was on my own independent line prior to the race, and then for him to join it, he knew he was setting us up for this. He knew Madani's were going to be on the Rooker family party.
So has he asked you to step aside?
I'm sorry?
Has he asked you to step aside?
Yes. I said, Andrew, are you that level of arrogance? I'm the sitting mayor. I'm the sitting mayor of the city of New York. And you expect for me to step aside when you just lost to Zohran by 12 points. He was up 32 points, $30 million. You lost. They heard your message and you lost. Now let a fresh set of legs that has produced for this city. And that's the highest level of arrogance.
But wait, there's more. Also in the race, conservative radio host Curtis Sliwa, who has run as a Republican in past elections, and independent lawyer Jim Walden. Does it seem like a lot of people want this job? Well, we got into it with Andrew Cuomo today. Let's get back to our Andrew Ross Sorkin and Becky Quick with this interview.
Former New York governor and independent candidate for mayor Andrew Cuomo is with us here live this morning at the table here in Times Square. Good morning to you, sir.
Good to be with you.
Look, we've had so many business leaders come on this broadcast and say what is going on. They don't love Mamdani. That was a surprise, I think, for a lot of New Yorkers. And yet he clearly is ahead in the polls, won the primary, beat the current mayor. I think the question now is you've decided to stay in this. What do you need to do differently? What can you do differently than you were doing before?
Yeah, good question. First, frankly, in the primary, I made some strategic mistakes. I had a big lead, so I basically played prevent defense. And I wasn't aggressive enough in the campaign. I didn't debunk his ideas. I didn't put forth my affirmative agenda strongly enough. Then on election day, we had an explosion of these under 30-year-old Bernie socialist type, anti-Israel type voters that no one had seen before in history, the proportion that they voted. So that's what happened in the primary. We now go to a general. The general is a different audience. It's a different electorate. It's bigger. It's more moderate. It's more Queens, outer borough. You have independents, you have Republicans voting. So it's a totally different ball game in the general.
Okay, play the math out, though, because we have a lot of folks who like to do math here, who watch our broadcast, and a lot of people who are thinking about who they want to put money behind. And right now, they're looking at you, they're looking at Mayor Adams. By the way, they're looking at Sliwa. Like there's a couple of, and there's a view that if all of you are in there, you're just going to effectively give votes to effectively Mamdani or to the other. So if Adams comes out, for example, and you stay in, what happens? Meanwhile, if you get out and Adams goes in, what happens?
Yeah, well, I think that's the bottom line question, right? A multi-candidate field favors Mamdani because he's a socialist on the Democratic line. I'm a Democrat on an independent line, right? Because politics is all upside down in this country right now. But you have a lot of people who knee-jerk go to the Democratic line, right? It's about 70% of the voters are Democrats in the general election, and he'll be on the Democratic line. So multi-candidate field favors him. If you get down to a two-person race, certainly he can be beaten. Polls show I beat him now in a two-person race. But that means the field would have to winnow down.
Which polls show that? Because we also have looked at Kalshi and Polymarket, which are these prediction markets that put him in a significant lead, almost invariably.
Yeah. The prediction markets do. A Harris X poll came out a couple of days and shows that I beat him in a one-on-one race. But the question is, how do you get there, right?
To a one-on-one race.
Right. And Governor Patterson, former governor of New York, a few others made a proposal that makes total sense in my mind. That is, come September, who's ever stronger, basically between me and Adams, that candidate should go forward, the other one should defer.
September 1st, September 30th?
Mid-September is what they were talking about, because then you really have to gear up for the November race. There's a Republican who would be in the race, but I think you could win with 3. With 4, it gets very hard.
But we had Eric Adams on this show, and he said, when I asked him about it, he was a little chagrined that you asked him if he was going to get out of the race. He said, I'm the incumbent mayor. You've already lost to Mamdani. Make the argument for why it should be you instead of him.
Because he's unelectable. He did not, he dropped out of the Democratic primary. Mayor Adams, because he's just not competitive in the Democratic primary. And this goes way back, right? This is before he was indicted, before the whole President Trump pardon, conditioned pardon, whatever that was. New Yorkers had turned off on him, on his management of the city, the ongoing corruption. So he entered the Democratic primary, then dropped out. Because Democrats, especially after his transaction with President Trump, are very negative on him. So he couldn't run in a Democratic primary. But Democrats are 70% in the general, and you can't win writing off 70%. But it's not, you don't have to decide that now. In September, the proposal is who's ever stronger goes forward. I have said that if I'm not the stronger candidate between myself and Adams, I will defer because I think it's that important to beat Mamdani. And the inverse, I think, should also be true. Otherwise, to stay in, you're just a spoiler. You're saying, I can't win, but I'm going to make sure Mamdani wins.
Let me ask you this. Mamdani's success has come from what arguably was this sort of affirmative message that he was going to deal with affordability. Now, whether he can deal with the things the way he's described, I think is a real question mark, if not impossible, in truth. Having said that, I would argue that you made an argument about experience, and the experience being also that you were not the current mayor, right? I mean, at the time, I think there was sort of a view, the current mayor was in trouble, I'm not him, vote for me. By the way, we saw this play out in the presidential election. Kamala Harris and Biden said, I'm not Trump, if you don't like Trump, vote for me. What do you think is the affirmative message beyond the experience piece for what you can do to the city?
Yeah, look, I think the problem with New York City has been twofold. Number one, you've had an incompetent government. Basically, since Mayor Bloomberg, that's 12 years, where you just haven't had a competent mayor in charge. Second, in this city, you've had this shift to far-left politics that has paralyzed the government. So it's anti-development. You can't build. It takes 4 years to get a building permit in New York City. I built LaGuardia Airport in 4 years, right? This anti-development, bureaucracy, incompetence, anti-public safety, defund the police, leftist movement. And I used to say when I was HUD secretary, look, a city is either growing or it is dying, right? And New York is all about development. It's all about growth. It's about pro-business. It's about entrepreneurship.
But how much do you worry that that's not what the city is about right now? I mean, what does this past vote about Mamdani say about the city? What does it say about the Democratic Party? Just, by the way, the big shift in the way the Democratic Party across the country has moved. I mean, look, you were supported and endorsed by the Clintons. For whatever, for better or worse, it often feels that the Clintons are now out of favor. It feels the Democratic Party is a different party today.
No, Andrew, there's no doubt this is a microcosm for what's going on across the nation. And I think with President Trump, you've had this far-right movement, and now you have this corresponding extreme left movement. I don't think either are productive, frankly. But Mamdani basically runs as a socialist. Not basically, he runs as a socialist, right? And not a dress-up socialist. He's a genuine socialist. Sold, everything is free education, free food, free this, free that.
By the way, just said, there was an article that just came out that says that where he said capitalism is theft.
Yeah. No, he is anti-capitalism. And he has been. It's not just for this campaign. He's purely a socialist.
So do you believe there are enough Democrats who believe that capitalism is not theft in the city?
In the city and in the nation, because this is a much bigger issue for the Democratic Party.
Well, you're exactly right. First of all, you can't have a socialist city in a capitalist nation. That does not work, right? You can't have a city where you say everything is free, we're going to have hyper-tax wealthier people, and expect them to stay here, right? They'll move, they'll leave. They have been leaving, right? Especially post-COVID, they're more mobile. So that's what he is selling. Now, he's a smooth salesman, and he's got slick slogans, freeze the rent, and fast free buses, and, politics has become so superficial now, and my fault, my campaign didn't really push him on it. And the Middle East issue was very big with those under 30 voters. So that's what happened in the primary. I do not believe in the general election you can sell that. Right. We are not socialists, right? Even in New York, we are not socialists. Even Democrats, we are not socialists. And they get it. New Yorkers are savvy. Everything free. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably not. There is no free lunch. They get it. But we have to have that dialogue.
You said the Middle East situation played a role in this. And I hear from business leaders all the time about what they fear, not just about the socialism piece, but what they think of as anti-Semitism coming from Mamdani, or a sense that he would allow anti-Semitism to flourish in the city. So let me start with a very basic question. Do you think he's an anti-Semite?
Andrew, that requires the ability to look into someone's soul. Are you anti-Semitic? Are you racist? Are you a bigot? I can tell you this. He fuels anti-Semitism. I mean, something as basic as globalized intifada, which basically says kill Jewish people globally, period. He refuses to condemn that statement. The most he will say if they're getting pushed and pushed and pushed, well, I'll discourage the use of it. He doesn't believe in Israel as a free Jewish state. I mean, these are very basic things. And this has been core to who he is. We have the largest Jewish population outside of Israel.
Right.
And we have some of the highest level of anti-Semitic activity in the United States of America. So, yeah, people are scared, and they should be.
Do you feel that you're running against him or Eric Adams in this moment right now?
It is against Mamdani. I do not believe Eric Adams is electable. I think all the data shows that. I think him not getting into the Democratic primary shows that by his own actions. If you can't run in the primary, you can't be competitive in the general.
You raised a lot of money before the primary. How is that going now? How are you able to raise money from big donors?
I am, but I tell you the truth, one of the lessons I learned, I spent too much time raising money in the primary. People know who I am. They know my message. It took a lot of time because in New York City, you have very low levels of donations. So you have to do a high volume of fundraisers. And that took a lot of time. And I'm focusing now more on just getting the message out.
Do you get additional voters to register the way Mamdani does? And if so, who's the target audience?
We will register more voters, but by the natural movement now in the general is you have a much larger pool. And I believe Mamdani, the way he activated the under 30, he's also going to activate the people out there who are afraid of an anti-Semitic socialist.
So we had
run.
something like 1 million votes in the primary. The last general was only 1.1 million. You think it's going to be a much higher turnout?
Yes, you had a higher primary turnout than usual. I think you're going to have a much higher general turnout than usual because, don't kid yourself, people are afraid of him.
Let me ask you
He is radical.
Let me ask you about Adams, though. The track record of Adams is actually not bad. It's actually quite good. If you look at what's happened to the city over the last 2 years, I think people would say safety has become a lot better. I mean, there's been a lot of metrics you could look at in a positive way. I think the big overhang on his candidacy is that a lot of people look at him and think that he is being held hostage by the White House, by the president, and what that means for the city. What do you think that means for the city?
Well, first, they don't get past your last point. Adams got indicted. He made an arrangement with the president, which is unprecedented, right? January 6th, he gave people a pardon. He said, go home. With Mayor Adams, he said, I am going to drop the charges so you can cooperate with my administration, specifically when it comes to immigration policy. And the prosecutor reserved the right to bring the charges back. So it looked like a transaction where Adams was bargaining for Adams, saying, drop the charges, I'll do what you want. And President Trump is not popular, decidedly not popular within the Democratic electorate. So that's point one, and that's fatal. Number two, there's been a series of corruption charges, almost on a weekly basis. More are supposed to be coming. And third, Andrew, I don't agree with you that people think the city is better. Maybe marginally better. You know, murders and shootings are down. Thank you. But rapes are up, and robberies are up, and grand larceny is up, and homeless, mentally ill people on the street that I'm afraid of, and the subways and the condition of the subways. So no, New Yorkers are not going to vote for another 4 years like the past 4 years.
Somebody made a fascinating argument to me about Eric Adams and his relationship with the president as it relates to being a positive for the city. I want to posit it with you. We have not seen in this city ICE arrests and raids like we have seen in LA and Chicago and other cities. The National Guard has not been called in. And the question is, why is that not happening in this city? There is a speculative view that that's not happening because the president doesn't want it to happen to protect him. Do you think that's true? And do you think if you win or Mamdani wins or somebody else wins, that all of a sudden the city is going to turn into some kind of National Guard ICE raid scenario?
Well, there's two theories, neither of which works ultimately. First theory is the president doesn't have to send in anyone because he has Adams doing his immigration work, right? Adams is in lockstep with honing in his whole immigration team. So, of course, the president doesn't have to send anyone in because he owns the New York City mayor who is executing Trump's policy, which is opposed by the Democrats. Second option, President Trump has recently said, I'm sending in people. He had Homeland Security Kristi Noem come in here just yesterday or the day before and was adamant that they had to send in federal troops. So, you know, with the president, you're not really sure which way it turns out. but neither is good. Neither Adams is the proxy for President Trump. That's the kiss of death among Democrats, and Democrats are, again, 70% of the electorate. Or the president winds up sending in the troops like L.A., and that's even going to be worse, because then you'll see the Democrats just explode.
Have you met Mamdani, by the way?
I'm on the debate stage.
But that's it.
Yes, he's been an assemblyman. He's 33 years old. He passed 3 bills. He was basically a non-entity in the Albany legislature. He was basically absent, and this is what he does. He's an social activist, advocate, smooth salesman, slick slogans, and left unchallenged, they buy it, right? It's the infomercial that comes on at 3 o'clock in the morning. 1 pill, lose weight, increase your libido, live to 100 years old. Order now, get 2 more free.
And finally, what's your relationship like with Eric Adams? So, because you guys are going to have get on the phone at some point, I assume, come September, and there's going to have to be a decision made about who's going to, take the torch and keep going.
Yeah, but I think that is what it's going to be. Andrew, he's out there campaigning, I'm out there campaigning. Do the research whenever you want in September, first week, middle of September. Who has a better shot against Mamdani? That is a quantitative question. You can figure it out. And if you believe that it's really about stopping Mamdani, which I genuinely do, then do what's in the right interest of the city, and the strong one goes ahead, the other person defers. Otherwise, you're just a spoiler, and you're driving the car off the cliff with the family inside the car.
Governor Cuomo, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Fascinating conversation. Come on back as this progresses. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Next on Squawk Pod, David Sacks, the White House artificial intelligence czar, on the global race that he says is more important than the last century's space race and is right on top of the president's to-do list.
If the U.S. continues to lead in AI, we'll remain the most powerful country. But if we don't, we could fall behind our global competitors like China.
You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC. Today with Becky Quick and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Up and Andrew, Q.
Good morning. Welcome back to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square.
President Trump laying out AI priorities for the federal government at a high-profile event in Washington. Eamon Javers joins us right now with more on that. Eamon, we're trying to figure out what this means overall and what we can expect to see in the industry as a result.
Yeah, good morning, Becky. Look, pledging that the U.S. will do whatever it takes to retain its global lead in artificial intelligence, President Trump signed 3 executive orders yesterday to speed up development in the field. The orders are designed to accelerate permitting of AI projects, expand U.S. tech exports, and eliminate what the president called woke in AI. Now, the president's plan aims to block the government from contracting with tech companies unless they ensure that their systems are objective and free from what they call top-down ideological bias. Now, I asked White House officials on a call yesterday, who's going to decide what ideological bias is? They responded that what they're mostly concerned about is eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion values from AI. Officials said they're also focused on clearing away regulatory hurdles to new projects, particularly environmental concerns around new plant construction. Trump also said he doesn't want copyright concerns slowing down AI's ability to utilize the world's knowledge base.
When you read something and when it goes into this vast intelligence machine, we'll call it, you cannot expect to every single time say, oh, let's pay this one that much, let's pay this one. It just doesn't work that way. Of course, you can't copy or plagiarize an article, but if you read an article and learn from it, we have to allow AI to use that pool of knowledge without going through the complexity of contract negotiations.
Now, that's significant because, as you guys know, media organizers, authors, and others have brought a barrage of lawsuits against AI firms for allegedly ingesting their work into large language models without financial compensation. Back over to you guys.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful in terms of what it means for all of these media companies and others who have been suing to try and uphold their rights on some of these things. Kind of goes back to what Satya Nadella said maybe a year and a half ago or longer to 60 Minutes when he said basically, or maybe it was Lester Holt, where he said, look, we have to rethink how copyright laws work, essentially, to make sure that this progress gets made. Clearing the pathways for some of the environmental issues, for trying to build out faster, I just wonder what you think that is going to mean, Eamon, in terms of how fast the progress goes, what this means in terms of America winning the AI race with China.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's largely environmental, right? And what they're concerned about is any kind of environmental reviews or any kind of regulatory slowdown of this vast data center build up, and also, the power supplies that's going to be important for AI as well. So I think if you are in the AI business, if you're in the data center business or anywhere adjacent to that, what you can expect now is sort of the full weight of the federal government sort of on your side of the argument, whatever it is on regulatory matters. I think that's probably a good thing for the AI industry as they look to expand. And I think, you just saw the president throw himself on one side of this copyright issue, he's all in with the AI industry on this, saying, they shouldn't have to be beholden to copyright as they ingest all this material, because that's sort of the world's knowledge and that should be for the world. Now, if you're somebody who's an author or a media company, you might, disagree. You might say, well, that's our knowledge and you're stealing it. So that debate is ongoing. The president clearly taking a side there. And all of this will be decided by, federal agencies who are large purchasers here. And the influence that they're using is the federal procurement of all of this stuff. They're going to set terms within the federal government for what they buy, including this sort of unbiased ideologically, guideline around this idea of not having DEI or woke ideology built into the AI. All of that's going to be in what the federal government buys, and that's going to be very influential for the industry.
Okay. Eamon, thank you. Joining us right now is White House AI and crypto czar David Sacks. And David, welcome. We really appreciate your being here today. There's a lot that we've been trying to figure out, trying to understand what yesterday all means. And I wonder if you can tell us how the private sector reads all of this and what they will do in response.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, first of all, let me just frame up what I think President Trump did yesterday. It was, I think, the most important technology speech by an American president since President Kennedy declared that we had to win the space race. And in a similar way, President Trump declared that we had to win this AI race. And I think you could argue that the AI race is even more important than the space race, because it's going to determine who reshapes the global economy and who the superpowers of the 21st century are going to be. If the U.S. continues to lead in AI, we'll remain the most powerful country. But if we don't, we could fall behind our global competitors like China. And I think President Trump laid out a plan for winning this AI race.
David, I'd agree with you. I think this probably is more important than the space race. How far ahead of China do you think we are right now in this race? How long would it take for them to catch up? How do we prevent that from happening specifically?
So I think when you look at our lead in the AI race, it kind of depends on what level of the stack you're looking at. So if you look at the top of the stack with the AI models, we're only, I would say, months ahead of the Chinese models. They've done a good job with models like DeepSeek and Qwen. But if you go deeper in the stack, we have, I'd say, more significant advantages. So when it comes to chip design, our leading company is NVIDIA. Their leading company is Huawei. I would say that NVIDIA is still a couple of years ahead. Then you go deeper in the stack to chip manufacturing, and you've got TSMC on the western side of the ledger, and they're several years ahead of the Chinese national champion, which is called SMIC. So it just depends on what level of the stack you're talking about. But I think the most important thing is that we try to maintain this lead. We don't want to sacrifice it. And I think President Trump brought up a few really important ways of doing this. Number one is we have to unleash American energy. The new AI data centers, the new infrastructure we need to build is very power hungry. It requires a lot of electricity. And President Trump signed an executive order to build out AI infrastructure. And he's understood for a long time that we have to drill, baby, drill. We have to build, baby, build. We have to, again, if you want to have AI dominance, you've got to have energy dominance. So that was a huge part of the speech. Another area that I think is very important that President Trump talked about is AI exports. We want the whole world using the American tech stack. We want the world to consolidate around an American standard. If we don't provide that standard, Huawei surely will. And so I think President Trump brought up that, and he signed an executive order to make AI exports easier.
He also made commentary. Well, actually, let's go to the energy part of this first, because signing this executive order is one thing. There have been others who have theorized that you really need an infrastructure plan that's organized by the government, kind of like the national highway system was set up. Do you think we need something along those lines, or can private industry really step in and bring us the energy needs that are going to be upon us in the next couple of years?
Well, private industry is already investing hundreds of billions of dollars in this infrastructure build out. So the private sector investment is there. What we need to do is unlock it from the shackles of all this red tape. It takes years to get permitted. President Trump promised to make that easier, to bring the timeline down from years to weeks or months. There's environmental concerns that really tie up these projects, and he's tasked Lee Zeldin with solving those. So I think that we do need to have more of a partnership mentality with the private sector, but it's the private sector is going to do the building here, and we just need to get unnecessary red tape out of the way to enable that.
David, related to that, though, is this question of just how much energy is going to be consumed. We talk about it on this broadcast all the time, the amount of energy that's required, the amount of water that's required. Obviously, certain states are better adept and also have less regulations around them. But ultimately, we've had some guests come on and say, 5 years from now, all these governors who are begging for this stuff to happen in their state may say to themselves, you know what, electricity prices are going to go up in my state to consumers. There's a question if there's a hurricane, who ultimately, gets the electricity in that because of the uptime requirements and guarantees that a lot of these tech companies are making with the data centers and therefore the energy providers, that could leave consumers out in the cold. How do you think about that dynamic?
Well, this is exactly why I think we have to build more energy. We have to unleash American energy, is because you don't want residential prices to go up every time you add a data center. It doesn't make sense. So it's true that in order to enable these new data centers that are very power hungry, you have to build more power generation. But that's the whole point of the executive order, and that's the whole point of President Trump's policy around making it easier to, again, drill, baby, drill. This is a campaign promise he made years ago, is that we had to make it easier to produce American energy. And he's had all of the above approach. I mean, he wants to make it easier for natural gas, for nuclear. He signed executive orders to make nuclear easier, and even what he calls big, beautiful coal. So I think that, the president has had this idea for a long time. He understands that more energy production is the basis for all future growth. And now that we have this AI boom going on, it's definitely the foundation for this AI, for the growth in AI as well. So I think this is the plan of the administration, is we got to produce more energy.
Hey, David, as the AI czar, people look to you for a lot of things, but you're a huge person from Silicon Valley, a huge figure in the industry. You grew up with PayPal next to Elon Musk. You learned an awful lot about that, and you're obviously invested in XAI as well. I just wonder how you look at the world in terms of open source or closed source models on these things, what you think about what OpenAI is doing right now. Do you have the same views as Elon Musk when it comes to what Sam Altman's doing, or do you see things a little differently?
Well, we don't take sides in which AI company is going to win. We just want to create the conditions, the environment for American AI to do well. And then within that environment or that ecosystem, we want to have at least several companies, maybe many companies competing. And we think that competition is good. That's what ultimately spurs America on. Under the Biden administration, they had this approach under this Biden executive order on AI of anointing a few winners in this AI race. That they had this mentality that they were going to centralize and control. And what we want to do is just create a level playing field so that we, let 1,000 flowers bloom. And, we think that competition brings out the best in everyone. That's how America wins, is we create the conditions for our private companies to compete with each other.
David, but speak to this if you can. I've been marveled at how successful Elon Musk has been, even in the past year and a half, in terms of spinning up XAI. And I would argue a lot of that has been his experience as a genuine engineer in terms of hardware and understanding energy. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about here is about energy. There have been questions recently about Stargate, which, of course, is the endeavor that Sam Altman and OpenAI have undertaken with Masa and how that's working out and how quickly that can get rolled out. How much, A, do you think that there's any issue with where Stargate is and how quickly that will roll out? And B, how much do you think that there's an issue of just how much experience and knowledge lives in Silicon Valley in terms of engineering to deal with this energy issue? Because the experience, with the exception of maybe Elon and some others who've dealt with hardware, is very different.
Well, it's true. You know, I've spent time with folks from Silicon Valley and folks from the energy industry, and they are rather different industries. And in the past, they haven't intersected that much. And there are, I think, cultural differences between the industries. In the past, the energy industry, the grid, for example, has only grown by a couple of % a year. They just haven't ever had to contemplate the issues of hypergrowth. And then by contrast, Silicon Valley is really all built around how do you scale as quickly as possible. So, but I think what's happening now is those conversations are happening. The Silicon Valley companies are driving out new requirements by the energy companies. And I think there's a lot of learning and sharing that's happening across those industries. So I think this is going to be figured out, and it's going to be enormously helped by the Trump administration making it easier to produce more energy. That's really the key here to solving this problem.
We have a situation now through the One Big Beautiful Bill and what the White House did yesterday, where you're not going to have a lot of states and different jurisdictions that are setting new rules for AI in different ways that they have to compete. But you're still going to have to figure out how this works around the globe. You think of the Digital Services Act and what Europe has already done to some of our technology companies by trying to crack down on them. How do you and the president look at this in terms of how we kind of navigate other jurisdictions around the globe and what they can and can't do, what they should and should not be able to do when it comes to our AI companies?
Well, what the president said in his speech is that we don't want overregulation to cost us winning this AI race. And that overregulation could happen if the states go wild overregulating. And there is some indication that that's a possibility. You've got 1,000 bills going through state legislatures right now. And the president also said that these international bodies also should not impose unnecessary regulation. So I think that this administration will push back on that, and we'll just have to see exactly how that plays out. But I think the basic idea here is that we have to prioritize winning the AI race, and we have to make sure that regulation is sensible. We're not saying that there shouldn't be any regulation, but we don't want there to be so much of it that it hobbles our AI companies and our innovation. And we also don't want so many different regulatory regimes that it creates a patchwork and it's confusing to our AI companies. So I think you'll see this administration pushing back in those areas.
What we did not hear, though, is any protection of copyright. In fact, the president himself said that copyright holders may just lose out on this, essentially. How do you make sure we win this race, but also not trample the rights of the creators underneath all of this as well?
Well, the president said that that AI models can't copy or plagiarize rights holders. So that's very clear. The question is around ingestion of data for AI training. And that is a question that's being litigated in the courts right now. And ultimately, what it will come down to is what is the fair use definition for AI training data. And I think the president started to stake out a position there that merely ingesting data for learning purposes is not a violation of copyright as long as the model, again, does not copy or plagiarize the output. Right. So we have a distinction here between inputs and outputs. And this is a question that's being litigated by the courts, but I think that President Trump's statements on this are very common sense, and I hope they will help guide this issue.
David, let me ask you about that, though. And this is maybe a philosophical question. So I've been writing a book for the last 8 years, a history book about 1929. And so I've ingested, if you will, hundreds of books, by the way, that I've read to learn about all sorts of different component parts. And hopefully some of those pieces end up not plagiarized, but in the book, and there's a bibliography and all of that, right? But that's one person, that's me doing that. And I can go to the library and get the books. I can go buy all the books. And I think we understand how that works. I think it's different, right, if a machine ingests the books and then can then not just spit out one book. It took me 8 years to do this, but can spit out a book, you know, every 3 minutes if it wanted to, and what the economics of that should actually look like.
Well, Andrew, I think you raise a good point, and we're in a new area here, and this all has to be figured out. But I would say two things. Number one is copyright historically has applied to outputs, not to ingestion or learning. And so, I think we have to consider that. The other is something that President Trump talked about, which is if you're going to require AI models to have a deal with every single article on the internet, we're talking about millions of articles, and in order to use that, then how is that going to be feasible? From a common sense standpoint, you're just not going to be able to make deals with every single one of those rights holders. And China won't care. China's just going to, they're going to suck in all the data. And so I think it will compromise our ability to win this AI race against China if they can use all the data, but we're hopelessly mired in impractical contractual negotiation.
David, real quick competition question. The president made a fascinating comment in his speech. He might have been talking to you, where he said he was asking about NVIDIA. He didn't know what NVIDIA was, and somebody told him that basically they own 100% of the market. He wanted to actually break them up, he said. Was that conversation with you?
No, I wasn't. I was not part of that one.
Wasn't you? The second related competition question, therefore, becomes, though, do you think we need a lot more competitors, both in chips and even in LLMs? I mean, one of the things we've started to see is because a lot of the big companies can't really, I think there's a view that regulators wouldn't allow combinations, that there's this whole acqui-hire trend. And I'm curious sort of where you land on the competition and acqui-hire world.
Well, I think what we're seeing right now is ferocious competition, especially at the AI model level. And I think that's good, and we want that to continue. At the chip level, it's true that Jensen has very high market share, but that's a result of him being so ahead of the curve on GPUs. I mean, he's been working on this for 30 years. When everyone else was focused on CPUs, he had this vision around GPUs. And so, in America, we don't punish winning. We don't punish success that comes from as a result of being visionary. And I do think, though, that NVIDIA, although they have high market share, they have a lead, but it's such a competitive industry still, the semiconductor business, that if they don't stay on top of their game, then they could lose to a number of companies that are challenging them, including startups. So I don't think we have a huge competition problem here. I think quite the contrary, these markets are very competitive.
Hey, David, thank you very much for joining us today. David Sacks, we hope you come back.
And that is Squawk Pod for today. You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernan, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears. Please follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.